Okay, another day, another chapter. Let's see what our friends do next. In chapter 14. Here we go. In the wake of George's interview video coming out, Nick lost 15,000 subscribers. It didn't feel good, but he thought it could have been a lot worse. It would take a couple of days, but he would bounce back. 15,000 was now a small number to him. His comment section had been a little upset for a day or two. However, his loyal subscribers had locked down on any dissenters. They were soon outnumbered, and it became a hostile environment for anyone trying to criticize Nick. By the end of the week, he could hardly tell the interview had happened. Nick's front yard seemed small, no more than 20 feet in any given direction, with a sidewalk splitting it down the middle. This meant that Nick's brand new hammock took up a majority of the open space and all of the sidewalk. There was slightly more space in the back, however. Nick wanted to lay in the sun. The sky was blue above him, and it looked clear except for one hawk that drifted in slow circles. He watched it through half-slitted eyes as he thought about his latest prank for Teddy. He'd iced and decorated Teddy's entire bed to look like a birthday cake using real ingredients. It wasn't his birthday, but he covered it in candles anyway. A car pulled into his driveway, though he paid no attention to it. He didn't feel like lifting his head. Only after the car door shut and he heard footsteps approaching him did he look. In blue jeans and a red tank top that fit enticingly, Jordan came strolling up. "Room for one more?" she said, and hopped in at his side. Nick hadn't expected that. He could feel the heat from her body against his, and his face flushed. "You're early," he said, feeling her body move as she breathed. "I didn't realize this was such a formal meeting." She turned to look at him, only to turn back away when she met his gaze. Her lips were facing his for only a moment, but the idea of kissing her consumed him. His pulse increased. Could she feel it? He thought she probably could, and willed it to slow down. He concentrated on the hawk in the sky, on the bass bumping from the car down the street. It grew closer, louder. He had to look up when the car whipped into his driveway. Teddy was home. He hopped out of his car and began coming over. When he noticed Jordan, a moment of shock crossed his face. Then it was gone. Without comment, he walked into the house, shaking his head. Nick didn't bother following him. All the cameras were already set up for the big prank. He even had a reaction camera on a stand for when Teddy came back outside to find him. With the work done, all Nick had to do was wait. "I was thinking we might go down to the beach today," Jordan began. She was cut off by an enraged shout from inside the house. Nick heard the tone and knew it was all wrong. He had heard Teddy angry before, but nothing like this. He got out of the hammock instinctively and took a couple of steps towards his house. Teddy came bursting out of the front door. He looked red-faced, and his fists were clenched. As he approached, Nick said, "Relax, it's just a prank." A moment later, there was a brief white flash of light, and Nick found himself sitting on the ground. He looked around, wondering how he got there. An uncomfortable ache began to spread on the right side of his jaw. Teddy stood over him, fists clenched, screaming down. Nick tried to blink out the fog in his eyes and understand his words. Jordan was there. She moved in, trying to get in between them. Teddy wasn't backing off. When she got in his space, he shoved her, and she came sprawling down on top of Nick. Nick tried to stand, but his balance fell off, and he fell to his side. His ears were ringing, though the sounds of the world were coming back. "We're done," Teddy said, then walked away. He got in his car and peeled out of the driveway. Nick managed to sit up again and gave himself a second to regain his senses. Jordan put her hand on his cheek. "Nick, are you okay?" Nick blinked a few times, trying to will the fog away. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, as he tried to remember where he was at. When he attempted to stand again, she pushed down on his shoulders. When he resisted, she went as far as sitting down on his lap. The feel of her body was what finally made him capitulate. "You have a concussion," she said, looking him over with a concerned glance. He had to agree with the diagnosis. Even though he could feel himself coming back to his senses, he remembered he was in his front yard, that Teddy had recently stormed up to him. He had sucker punched Nick. That became clear. Nick thought of standing again, but he liked the feel of Jordan in his lap. He decided to stay a little longer. "I'm fine," he said to her after a moment. "Really." He felt a wave of nausea wash over him, but it passed hastily. "Are you sure?" asked Jordan. Nick forced a laugh. "Yeah, I'm feeling back to 100%. Regrettably, she began to climb off of him. As she stood, she reached out a hand and offered it to him. With her support, Nick stood on shaky legs, doing his best to hide it. When he was up, she asked, "Why'd he do that?" "Prank war," said Nick. "I think technically I just won." Now that the initial concussion symptoms were beginning to wear off, Nick could feel it in his jaw. He put his hand over the sore spot and began working it around. He cautiously pressed around his teeth with his tongue. They all felt pretty sturdy, which was a plus. "What did you do?" asked Jordan. "I made him a cake." Jordan looked puzzled. "What's the catch?" Nick smiled through the pain. "Instead of filling in the middle, I used his bed." Jordan laughed. "Oh, I've got to see this." Nick led her inside to Teddy's perfectly iced bed cake. Jordan read "Happy Birthday" out loud, then began to laugh. You did this on his birthday? No wonder he punched you." "Nah," said Nick. "His birthday's a couple of months away." Nick took the comforter and began folding it in the corners. He had been sure to leave a little space on each where he could grab it. With the comforter folded in on itself, the bed underneath stayed clean. He had done this by design, counting on not ruining Teddy's bed. With the blanket folded up, Jordan helped him to carry it outside, where they could spray it down with the hose. "This is dumb," said Jordan as they were spraying it down. "What's the point? We're in a prank war. People know it, so both of our channels are getting a boost in subscribers and subs," said Nick. However, he waved the blanket around, checking for any big chunks they missed. "The problem is that so many people are expecting us to prank each other, it feels like we can never stop. Tensions are getting high. Well, I think they just broke." "What are you going to do now?" she asked. Nick thought about it for a moment, then said, "This needs to end. I'm gonna suck it up, pretend I'm not mad, then I'm going to end this prank war and save my friendship." Jordan looked incredulous. "That's awesome. I think if it were me, I'd punch him back." "Ah," said Nick. "He made a fool of himself on camera. That's enough for me." Nick did think about punching Teddy back. It would feel good, but at what cost? He would lose his friend, and the situation would be escalated. Better to end it and put it behind them. "You're still uploading the video?" "Hell yeah," said Nick. "I'm not letting myself get punched in the face for nothing. I mean, you have to admit it's an epic conclusion to the prank war." "I can't argue that," said Jordan. "I'm just saying, if you're trying to save your friendship, that might not be the best route to take." Nick didn't agree with that, though. Nick didn't agree with that thought. He'll be cool with it when he sees how many new people it brings to his channel. "Okay," said Jordan, though she didn't sound convinced. With all the frosting off the comforter, Nick ran it through the washing machine. While they waited, they went and hung out on the couch. Water. That's some high quality H2O. Okay, sorry. When Jordan had said she would come over, Nick felt filled with elation. It had been the only thing he thought about. Teddy's reaction to the prank had changed that. Nick wanted to get back to that point, but he couldn't help but drift into a sour mood. They played video games for a while, and this helped, but there was really no saving it. When the time came for Jordan to leave, he hugged her, but didn't go in for the kiss. If she was disappointed, he couldn't tell. "Good luck," were her parting words before pulling away. As soon as she drove out of sight, Nick set to work editing the last prank video. There were a few smaller pranks he had filmed earlier that he would use at the beginning of the video to build it up. He made no effort to have Teddy look good. Instead, he made slight efforts to do the opposite. It seemed only fair. By the time Teddy returned home, the video was uploaded and gathering its first views. Nick heard his car pull in the driveway and waited. He stood in the living room, his heart pounding, a rhythm in his ears. When Teddy walked in, they squared off with each other. The air felt stale between them. Neither spoke. They just let it simmer. "I washed your comforter," Nick said, after almost a full minute had passed. There was no kindness in his voice. "Good," said Teddy. "You're the one that made it dirty." "It took 2 seconds. And yet you're still the one who made it dirty." Nick did everything he could to keep himself from rolling his eyes. He had to remind himself that this was a peace mission. He still couldn't help himself and let it slip. "I don't know what your problem is." Teddy crossed his arms. "You think it's okay to cover someone's bed in chocolate? When you're in a prank war that's gaining both people a ton of subscribers and money," said Nick. "Yeah, I think it's expected." Teddy dropped his arms and began walking. He looked like he might shoulder check Nick, but Nick was ready. Having already been sucker punched, his guard was up. He stepped to the side, and Teddy stumbled as his shoulder hit nothing but air. When he reached his bedroom door, he turned back. "You think you have everything figured out, don't you?" Nick knew that he should stay quiet, that the situation was delicate. If he wanted to save his friendship, he needed to shut up. However, his jaw hurt, and maybe he didn't need a friend like that. "More so than you," he said. "Yeah, you're Mr. Hotshot," said Teddy. "You got your fancy car, my girl. Aren't you lucky Jason took you in as his little pet? Nick felt incredulous. Your girl? He laughed. You talked to her one time on a dance floor. You know a girl like that wouldn't have anything to do with you without your YouTube channel. She's probably just trying to get to Jason. Well, she's not trying to get to you. Teddy's face went red as he tried to pretend he wasn't bothered. You're a loser, he said. You've always been a loser. I don't know why I ever kept you around. It became clear to Nick at this moment that Teddy was saying anything he could to try and piss him off. It was also clear that Teddy struggled not to be outraged himself. This made Nick feel like he had the high ground in the conversation. He smiled. Whatever, man, he said. Let's just end this prank war. It's clearly gone too far. Fine, said Teddy. If I get the footage of today's prank. Nick hesitated, knowing he had already uploaded the video. He had expected Teddy to ease up once his new subscriber boost came rolling in. He had not been expecting a request for the footage. No, said Nick. I worked hard and took a punch for that footage. Teddy was long-faced, looking like he didn't care at all. It was my bed. So what, said Nick. It was my prank. That's how we've always done it. You're the most entitled person I know. Oh yeah? Asked Nick. Because you can't steal footage off my cameras? If it weren't for your famous cheating cousin, no one would be following you, said Teddy. There's nothing special about your videos. Nick purposefully snorted, as if he found this amusing. Then I guess I'm lucky. Yup, said Teddy. And yet some of us can't be born into royalty. So why don't you share some luck and give me the footage? Nick hesitated, unsure what to do. The footage was already out in the world, and the truth of that would infuriate Teddy. I can't, he said finally. Teddy shook his head. I don't think I've ever met anyone as selfish as you. No, Nick went on. I mean, I physically can't. Huh? It's already online. Teddy whipped out his phone and stood there, scrolling for a few minutes. When he found what he was looking for, he cursed. I didn't know you'd want the footage, said Nick, his stomach clenching. The look on Teddy's face was that of pure hatred, and Nick realized then how bad he'd messed up. Teddy was his childhood best friend, and now he watched that friendship disappear. Breathe, Nick told himself. His anger wouldn't last, but a rift between them would. Come on, man, said Nick. This has all got out of hand. Teddy was shaking. I ought to punch you in the face again. Nick felt a wave of defensiveness. It had been wrong for him to have been punched the first time, and he felt an urge to make it known that there would be consequences if it happened again. Yet Teddy was already very upset, and he didn't want to do anything to set him off more. You're not worth it, Teddy continued. I'm out of here. He turned and left as Nick watched, not knowing what to say. Teddy slammed the door, and dust fell from the ceiling fan. Nick wasn't sure what to do, so he settled for playing video games in his room. He waited for Teddy to come back, to talk out their differences. After an hour, he began pacing the house. After 2, he settled for sitting on the couch. He turned the TV on, though he wasn't trying to watch it. The background noise helped to relax him while he played around on his phone. He tried to call Teddy and got sent to voicemail, so he had to settle for unread texts. He continued to wait with no results until at some point he fell asleep. Nick woke the next morning mid-snore. He sat up and glanced around. He felt confused at first, but soon remembered he had been in his living room when he went to sleep. There was little. There was still no sight of Teddy. There was still no sight that Teddy had been back. On the TV, the morning news show went through their routine. Nick yawned and stretched his attention anywhere but the screen. It wasn't until he saw himself that he became aware of it at all. Nick sat up, all thoughts of yawning gone. The show on TV was a nationwide program, a place he was not prepared to see himself staring back. Nick fumbled with the remote, trying to turn it up. On the screen, a blonde-haired woman in a business-style dress said, "Drama on the internet yesterday when a prank war goes too far." "Oh boy, what do you got for us?" said an overly tan man sitting on the couch next to the lady. The lady lifted her hand, and the screen cut away to the video of Teddy marching out of the house and punching Nick. Jordan's wide eyes watched as Nick fell to the ground. When the camera cut back, the anchorman forced an obnoxious laugh. "Wow, Tina, that looks like it hurt." "You bet, Bill," replied the blonde lady. The fight all started when two roommate YouTubers began a harmless prank war. Well, needless to say, things got out of hand rather quickly. A montage of Nick and Teddy's pranks began to flash across the screen. Nick thought it was edited crudely, but understood they were probably pressed for time. The familiar videos allowed him to break his concentration from the screen for a moment. He opened his phone and checked to see if his subscriber count had changed. Nick almost choked as he saw the number shooting up. And thus concludes that chapter. Oh man, poor Teddy and Nick. They took it too far. A little bit of jealousy coming out of Teddy. I think he liked Jordan more than we have seen. It's just a rough day. Rough day, but they're on the news now, so that's crazy. Anyway, until next time.